Hey, this is attorney Elizabeth Potts Weinstein, and today we're going to talk about, can you file a trademark application from outside the United States without an attorney? If you want to DIY your own trademark application, but you are physically located outside the United States, the default rule is that the trademark office wants you to hire a U.S. attorney, and they put up two roadblocks for you that you'd have to overcome to be able to represent yourself that you may or may not be able to do. The first one is about your domicile, the owner's domicile. So even if the LLC or corporation is going to own it and not you personally, it's about what's the domicile, the street address for where you human person are living, or the main officers or work of the business is physically located. The other thing is ID.me, the identity, the identification of the human person who's doing the filing. So let's say the owner is an LLC or corporation you set up inside the United States. There still has to be some human who is literally typing in the forms and filling out the application. So who is that human? So those are two different things the trademark office looks at to let you file your application. The domicile of the owner as well as the identity of the person who is filing. So let's dive into this a little bit more. So when we look at the domicile of the owner, here's where it comes up. When you start filling out the trademark application, if you get to that point, it will ask on the second screen for information about the owner. And you put in the owner of the mark. And let's say you put that the owner is an individual. Okay, it's going to ask, what is the country of citizenship? Let's say you're a citizen in the United States, but you're actually located overseas. Okay, in that hypothetical, you're going to have a mailing address that can be a post office box, whatever, it can be anywhere, but you have to put your domicile address. So if you put a post office box or virtual mailbox here, the trademark office is going to look that up. And they're going to see that it's virtual, or a post office box, that's obvious. But if it's a virtual mailbox, even if it's a virtual mailbox that has a street address, so it can get like UPS mail or something, it is still in the system they will use and at the post office, and they will check. The trademark office will check the post office to see if it is a commercial mail service. So you have to put your domicile, and the domicile has to be in the United States. Even if you are a citizen of the United States, if you're physically traveling overseas and you live now permanently in Spain, that's not in the United States, obviously. And so this will be the roadblock for you, that your domicile is outside the United States. And so if the owner is you personally, you won't be able to file the application yourself because the domicile is outside the United States. Even if you're a U.S. citizen, you will need to put in a street address in the United States if you're going to represent yourself. Now, the street address can't just be, like I said, a virtual mailbox, because the trademark office will look it up. So let me show you what happens is, let's say that you go ahead and use some virtual mailbox service that says it's a street address, and you put that in your application. You will get an office action like this that one of my clients got, and I redacted their personal information, that they will look up in the U.S. Postal Service Coding Accuracy Support System database, and they will be able to tell that it's a commercial mail receiving agency. So if, let's say, you're not an individual owning the trademark, you formed an LLC or a corporation in the United States, that's your business, you will have to either provide the street address for that. That has to be a real address. You have to provide evidence that that actually is the address, even if it's a commercial agency. So let's say you rent out co-working space and you actually have an employee who works there. You have a sales rep who works there. Then you're going to need to prove that up. So you need to give them a copy of your annual or quarterly report or some sort of annual report you file with the state, or give some kind of rental lease mortgage agreement. I don't have a mortgage, but a rental agreement or a lease that you have for that space. That may be how you're running things, and there is a physical location, but you're gonna have to prove it up. The other thing you can do is provide a detailed explanation that you have no fixed address, no fixed physical address. So I have not actually done this yet because all my clients have a street address that we will get. But the idea is that if you have a business that is completely virtual, so there's no inventory that you have, you're not producing anything, you're not doing services that are done in person, none of that. It is, ebooks, it is drop shipping, it is something that is a completely online thing. You may be able to provide evidence and explanation for that of how there is no physical location. No, especially no permanent physical location. I actually did another video that went into this stuff a little bit more, and I'll link that somewhere up here or down below. But this is one of the big things, one of the big issues you'll run into. If you're an individual who's going to own the trademark and you're outside the United States, you don't have a domicile. If you have an LLC or corporation that you formed inside the United States, maybe you can come up with an argument that there's a domicile in the United States, or because you have an employee in a physical place and you can prove that up, or that there is no physical location, there's no physicality to your business. It is 100% virtual business. But there's another problem. The other problem is ID.me. It is the identity proof up that you have to do for yourself as the human person who is filling out the application. So let's dive into that. So when you go to apply online, the trademark office talks about how you have to log in now. Now, generally speaking, this logging in is a good idea, because what happened was random people would do filings in other people's trademark applications. And because they didn't have to log in and prove who they were, it was very hard to fix that and undo it and to have any kind of fraud prevention. And this actually happened. This is a legit fraud that was happening. So what they did is they wanted to create a system where they can identify who is actually filing this, response to a trademark application or whatever it was, or an assignment or something like that. So they want you to log in and they want you to actually prove your identity. It's not just your email and a password. You actually have to prove who you are. But here's the thing. How do you actually prove who you are? The main system they use, there's two different ways. One is a paper system and one is an online system. So let's go ahead and look about that. So if you go to the identity verification for trademark files, it talks about that there's paper verification and online verification of your identity. Now, paper verification, we're going to look at the form you have to fill out and what IDs you have to get. But there's a couple parts that go to this. First, you have to fill out a form. You have to present 2 forms of government identification, and we're going to look at what the government identifications are, and it has to be notarized. Cannot do online notarization like through notarize.com. It has to be in-person notarization. From a U.S. notary, okay, you might, in theory, be able to go to a U.S. embassy or other, U.S. overseas facility and get them to notarize it. I don't know if that's even possible to do. Maybe. That's a maybe. Otherwise, there's going to be no way for you to get anything notarized by a U.S. notary overseas. That would be the only way that I know of, because they don't allow online notarization. So that's going to be a problem. Now, if you happen to be traveling in the United States because you come in to work on your business every so often, then maybe you can do that while you're here. You can fill out these forms, get the notarization, and mail it in. But what forms are you going to have? Okay, so here's the document that you have to fill out, your name, address, all that stuff. And then this is mostly things you'd be able to fill out, but it has to be notarized and they have to check your identification. So what IDs can you give? So you have to have 2 forms of ID. The thing is, these are pretty much all U.S. ID things. The U.S. passport, a state driver's license or ID card, U.S. military card, this kind of stuff. Now, they have stuff about foreign passports, but that's only if you're a permanent resident of the United States. So that's, you'd be resident of the United States, so we wouldn't be having this problem anyway. You'd have a social security number. The same kind of thing where, an I-94, like you'd be here in the United States because you're authorized to work in the United States, so you'd have a physicality here. Nor Native American tribal document. They do have a thing for driver's license from Canada, so apparently they trust Canadian stuff. They do have a school ID card with photograph, voter's registration card. There's a possibility you could end up with 2 documents on this list, but I'm thinking that most people won't have that, who are not citizens of the United States and are living overseas and aren't here. They're not authorized to work here, permanent resident. But maybe. If you can get a U.S. notary, if you can get the 2 forms of government identification, then you can get that stuff signed. I think a lot of people are going to not be able to get the U.S. notary and not going to have the 2 forms ID. So what's the online verification? Is that better? Well, so one way to do it is like this automated online verification that uses your social security number. I think you can also use an ITIN, and that might be the other way to go about it, but I haven't had someone actually do that yet successfully. So a social security number isn't just for getting social security, even though that was why it was originally invented. In the United States, a social security number really is your personal identification number for many, many purposes, including taxes. But if you're not a U.S. citizen, not a permanent resident, you probably wouldn't have a social security number. So in that case, you can get a ITIN, which is an identification number for tax purposes before the IRS for someone who doesn't have a social security number. If you own a business in the United States, you're probably going to need one of those to do tax stuff, but you may not have gotten that already. And I actually would recommend getting one if you own a business in the United States, because it's going to probably take a little while and you're going to need it anyway. But talk to your tax preparer or accountant who's in the United States about whether or not you need it in your personal situation. If you don't have a social security number or ITIN, you can't use the kind of automated online verification. Also, for the online verification, I think you can only do it with a U.S. passport book, a U.S. passport card, or a driver's license in from a U.S. state. So I don't think it would probably work. Because if you had those, you would be here anyway, most likely. That might work for a U.S. citizen who's overseas. So, because they'd have their passport and they might be able to, and they'd have a social security number and they might be able to use this system. They need 2 forms of ID, by the way, of course. So, we'll see if they have that. So that's a self-service option. The other option is the video chat agent. This is something that I recommend you might try to do, even if you don't have a social security number. It seems though that you still have to have the social security number to do this. One of the issues is that ID.me, that is a private system. That's not part of the government. They have a contract with the government to do this kind of stuff with a whole bunch of different agencies. It's very, very controversial, actually, because of how difficult it is. They no longer are doing it for the IRS, but they're still apparently doing it for the Veterans Administration. So anyway, it's very difficult to get information about exactly what you need because the trademark office says stuff, ID.me says stuff. I don't know what actually happens in real life when you do the verification, because the only verification I've personally done is for me, and I'm a U.S. citizen and I live in the United States and I have all these different IDs. You might try the video chat agent version. When you select it, when you go to set this up, how it actually works is first you set up your USPTO.gov account with your name and email and stuff, and then you go into verify it. And then you're going to select the video chat agent and select that you don't have a social security number, you're outside the United States. You might be able to figure out a way to make it work. You might be able to get enough ID documents for them to verify you, but I don't think it will work for most people. I think that either they won't do it at all because you don't have a social security number, because that's actually what the USPTO seems to be saying, or you won't have the right identification documents because they want US stuff. And you won't have that because you're not in the United States. So what is the solution for this? The solution is to hire an attorney. And I'm not saying that because I think you should hire me necessarily, even though I do offer some of that stuff. But that's what the USPTO wants. They want you to hire a lawyer because they want all this stuff, all these trademark applications from outside the United States to be screened by US attorneys who are saying that these applications are legitimate. And that's what they're requiring. So where should you look for a U.S. attorney? What are the different options available for you? So here's the thing. It has to be a U.S. attorney. It can't just be a filing service where there's no attorneys. I recently did a video where I reviewed a bunch of trademark filing services. The short version of that is 2 of the services that I reviewed that actually have lawyers there are LegalZoom and Trademarkia. So let's look at LegalZoom, and let's pull up Trademarkia. So here's LegalZoom. You go to business, trademark registration, okay? And then you go to Trademarkia, trademark registration. Both of these have lawyers that work there. Well, Trademarkia, the lawyers actually work there. With LegalZoom, it's like they contract with the lawyers, but a lawyer will actually be on your application. What's the other options? The next option is if you have a business that is solely on Amazon, you're just doing it, wanting the trademark to do the Amazon brand registry, then I recommend you go through the Amazon brand registry system. And they have lawyers that they've contracted with to get you better rates. And also they know how Amazon brand registry stuff works. I recommend you go through that system because most likely that will be the most efficient way for you to get the Amazon brand registry stuff set up. The third option is for you to hire a lawyer directly. Now, right now, as I'm recording this, I do have spots to help people. So you understand, I charge more than these other services. And individual lawyers will probably charge either the same as these services or more because you're kind of getting individual service. I will not be doing trademark registrations forever, so by the time you're watching this, I may or may not be doing it. You'd have to just check the links below to go to my website and see if I'm accepting new clients. If you are doing something that's fairly complicated, if you have a big enough budget, having your lawyer is great. But if you have a very small budget and you need to do this as cheap as possible, which is probably true because you're thinking about representing yourself, then I either go through the Amazon Bread Registry lawyers, or when they don't work at Amazon, they're outside attorney law firms that contract to give you flat rates. Or I'd use LegalZoom or Trademarkia. Of those two, I'd probably pick Trademarkia, but you can go either way. So again, this is attorney Elizabeth Potts Weinstein. If you have any question about what we talked about today, I know it was a bit complicated, go ahead and ask them in the comments below and I'll try to point you in the right direction. Thumbs up if you found this video helpful. Subscribe for more videos like this. And if you'd like to join the Discord to be able to connect with other business owners like you or sign up for the Patreon, links to that stuff is in the description below. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.